Hey everyone, Ampro Engineering here, and I wanted to go over one of my more extravagant lighting sets that I created. This was probably one of my most ambitious challenges up until, quite a while. If anybody is familiar with this particular body, this is the Tamiya. I believe it's the 58044 Mitsubishi Pajero. It has been re-released on a similar chassis, and I can talk about that in a sec, as the Montero, but from what I can tell, the body has very, very minor changes. What attracted to me this is I always kind of like the look of it. I mean, it's definitely a bit on the cartoony side, although I think the proportions are pretty accurate. If anybody's ever seen one of these, it's not the longest car in the world. In fact, it has proportions pretty spot on to this vehicle. You'll notice I don't do very much box art. This is a completely paint scheme. There's no decals on this body. I don't think at all, actually. I don't think there's any. Nope. No decals. The issue I always had with this body is, although it was incredibly detailed, it lacked any kind of lighting. The headlights were nice molded units, and it's pretty common to find these things running around with some kind of a little headlight bucket that's been improvised and placed in there and looks very, very good. One of the things I wanted to do was actually make these side markers operational. It proved to be a little bit difficult, and the results were surprising to say the least. The rear was a lot more straightforward. All of these are going to require you to cut the lens out, and I replaced it with I believe this is an acrylic lens that was 3D printed, and it has a little bucket on the inside with 4 holes to mount a total of 4 LEDs. The front is quite a bit more unique. The top portion here of the turn signal has a 3mm hole at the back of it for you to plug in an LED. The bottom, however, was constrained by a lack of space. So what I did, and you can see it from here, is although the top and the bottom are a single piece, the only thing that holds them together is a very thin rib of plastic, which is basically hidden by this black line. The black parting line is painted, but it's also molded into the lens. This way, and you'll see in a moment, when this upper lens flashes, the bottom one does not flash nearly as much as if this was one solid piece of plastic. Inside the headlight, you see a little kind of a cylinder. What's happening is this lower lens has a fiber optic pipe that butts up to the LED on the inside, and the results are quite accurate. The headlights are not pieces that I've created. Instead, these are simply pilfered from a Tamiya Toyota high lift Hilux. It's the re-release of the original early 1980s Toyota body. They are a really good fit. The final thing that I added was this little fog light set. This was kind of a no-brainer because it already had these screw holes here and here for the way that these bodies mount. For those of you that aren't familiar, you'll notice that on the outside of the body, or I should say on the outside of the hood, there are no visible hood pins. And the reason for this, as I flip the car over, is this chassis, which is, if you can see if it looks familiar to you, this is the original version of the CW01 chassis that later became the Midnight Pumpkin and Lunchbox, and is still in production today. This variant has a little post here in the front that protrudes, and it has these little tabs that screw into the body, so you basically put the body on and slide it backwards, and it locks into place. It's kind of unique. Well, since these screws are already here, I'm like, well, might as well use that. So I made these 2 little fog lights that are one solid piece. These have a 5mm LED hole in the back, and these lenses are the fog lights from that same Toyota Hilux high lift. I'm sure the first question you're going to have is how I actually wired these lights, and truth be told, I didn't. These lights are nothing more than a simple light kit that you can find on eBay for under $10. I don't love them, and I'll explain why when I turn them back on. They work great for the turn signals, brake lights, reverse lights. I love them. The headlights are a little weird, and I can basically explain why. Now, first things first, I think it looks great. Okay, headlights are nice and bright. Fog lights are nice and bright. And that's precisely why I don't like those lighting kits. For some peculiar reason, the headlights are controlled by the throttle. So when you initially turn the car on, the headlights are dim. When you accelerate, they brighten up. I don't know why that's the case. Kind of a little beef that I have with them. So these headlights are wired directly into a 5-volt source, so they're bright all the time. What I do want to mention is this parking light here. You'll notice that it is in fact illuminating. You can see here that the parking light has a nice glow, and if you feel that maybe it's just the reflection of the headlight, I'm going to go ahead and plug the headlight with my finger here. Of course there we go. We can see it right there. It has a very nice glow to it. More importantly, the turn signal is not illuminated, and that's really what I was trying to get at. So let's see how the back of the car looks. Now, I really wish this showed better. The taillights almost look like they're glowing yellow, and I assure you that's simply the way that the camera's picking up the light. This is set up so that each one of these regions, there's 4 regions, has separation so that it keeps the lighting concentrated in its particular spot. I made a little mistake on these taillight buckets. I actually printed them in white nylon, and I didn't actually paint them an opaque color, so there's a little bit of light bleed. Since we're zoomed in on this taillight, let's see how the light kit actually works. So as I accelerate, there's no change in the lighting. I'm gonna hit the brakes now, and you can see it gets a lot brighter. Now I'm gonna go backwards, and it really looks like the whole thing lights up. It's not nearly as bright as it appears, but it could really look better had I actually painted those a more opaque color. Turn signals. Take a look at the front. If I cover that up, you can see that the bleed from the top to the bottom is quite minimal. Before I go over the images of the installation, I do want to mention one thing. This vehicle is normally equipped with the rear shocks from a Grasshopper. I think they have a bit of a different color, but otherwise it's the same shock. I wanted to upgrade these, so I went ahead and put Hornet shocks on them. Unfortunately, the Hornet shock has a base inconsistent with the Grasshopper style mount. So basically what I've created is an adapter for a Hornet shock absorber to a Grasshopper style mount. These mounts I've used all over the place. I have a seemingly unending supply of Hornet rear oil-filled shocks, so these were a natural choice to use here. Let's go ahead and take a look at some images of what's required on this body. You will start off with these 3 components, and mind you, there's 3 for the right and 3 for the left. This is the hard part, is cutting holes in your beautiful styrene. Drill it out first, score it with an X-Acto knife, and slowly but surely you can start to bend it back and forth and break the pieces out. Make sure that you cut within the trim over here because the lens fills it up. The light bucket here is glued in. Just note that in this mock-up it's upside down. This belongs on the other side. This is a pretty tough cutout. Again, same as before, drill it out in the center and then very carefully score the edges with the X-Acto knife. Once you've done that, you can test fit the side marker and it will pop into place. And have the light pipe protrude into the body. From here we can take the headlight lens that's from the high lift, drill a hole in it, test fit it, and then you'll see how the headlight lens will have the light pipe protruding inside. Once the lens is fitted, you can see we're kind of on the way there. And remember that there is both a left and a right that you have to do this to. Here's the headlight and the turn signal installed and painted, and same with the taillight. I hope everybody enjoyed the build for this. This has been a lot of fun to create all of these lighting pieces. Again, this tends to be one of my favorite things to do with RC cars, is make them light up. Please subscribe. We've got a lot more lighting videos, as well as suspension upgrades, trim upgrades, chassis fixes, rims, you name it, for many, many Tamiya and non-Tamiya RC cars. Please follow me on Instagram and like me on Facebook. I can be found on both by searching Ampro Engineering. There is a link to Shapeways where these products can be purchased, and I'm always very excited to read comments. I will do my best to answer any questions that you may have on either how these pieces perform or any questions you have about the installation. Thank you so much for watching.